Two 5Ks with over 100 people, Red Zebra Grand Prix having a big tournament, and so many other stores that we are going to be taking a look at, because what does this mean for the current meta of Set 7? All of that and more we're going to be diving into right now. So now we are a month into this set being released, dual colors, and it is looking rather interesting. Now, of course, everyone might be freaking out saying that Sapphire is the most powerful deck combination, or the most powerful color, and, you know, they would be right in a lot of ways with that. But at the same time, it's going to be really interesting to look into what we might be seeing with this current meta, especially as things are getting, well, more defined. One thing that you got to keep in mind, too, especially with this new set, that literally on day one we had a 100-person tournament, that someone was able to come in and play, you know, the Oswald items build, and it was able to win. And that made everyone immediately flood into the blue steel of the meta, and you saw it all of a sudden get saturated. Everything got left behind with that as well, so it was really interesting to see what that necessarily meant. And rightfully so. It was the brand new toy that everyone wanted to play with, and it was doing an absolutely good job. And then you also saw a little bit of a shift where people started playing not just Oswald item, but they took a step back and just played regular aggro as well with blue steel, which was rather interesting. A lot of Alice's and things of that nature breaking into the meta again. And then in the last week, and especially this week, you even saw a little bit of a step back from that, where people weren't necessarily playing Oswald items. You saw a few, sure, but they went back to just regular blue steel items without really the aggro version of it as well. And so you've been seeing this hybrid, this meta develop a little bit more over it as well. Also, if we go ahead and take a look at Ruby Sapphire, it was really interesting too, because in the beginning of the new Set 7 meta, you didn't necessarily see anything that was to write home about. In fact, you probably saw Ruby Sapphire take a full disappearance, mainly because probably everyone was hopping over to Sapphire Steel. At the same time, though, it seemed like that it was trying to do a little bit too much. You know, it was missing out on trying to incorporate all the new cards while losing what it was actually good at doing. And so finally, when you go ahead and take a look at this meta and it coming back in with Ruby Sapphire, you find that it's not necessarily running the bells. In fact, it's going back to what it used to be doing. Sure, it might be running a few more items, but all in all, it's not running any of the bells. It might run some Scrooges, but all in all, the newest thing that it might maybe be running is the Tamatoas. And rightfully so. It's a great card, and it's the best card of this set, which is why it's still at $50 in America. And so there's going to be some interesting things. And it felt like for a long time, this meta has just been locked down. It's going to be Ruby Sapphire, or it's going to be Sapphire Steel, and that is it. But something's interesting is happening, and it seems like that with these tournaments, the longer that this set is out, the more and more that people kind of take a step back. While yes, these are really great decks, and yes, Blue Steel is probably the best deck of this meta, of the Set 7 meta, but at the same time, Ruby Sapphire is there as well, but there's other things that are kind of trickling in to this meta and are starting to place really well at the tournaments. And that's not to say that, you know, they're winning the tournaments necessarily. No. It's still going to be a lot of Ruby Sapphire winning tournaments and Blue Steel winning a lot of the tournaments, but that's just because the tournaments are so much more saturated with these deck lists, which is what's making it so interesting to be able to see how all of this is getting developed. And so we're going to go ahead and take a look at some tournament deck lists here. We have about 4 or 5 tournaments that we are going to be taking a look at. And the first one is going to be the WCC Arcadia's Island that happened on Sunday. Now this is a 5K here. Really interesting. 125 players. Really interesting. Now, take a look at this meta. This is interesting, and I want to take a good look here. Okay, because yes, we don't necessarily have who got first, second, and third. I mean, it's kind of safe to assume who might have gotten first, second, and third, but it just says top 4, top 8, top 16, you know, kind of thing. But take a look at this. This is really interesting because yes, Popsicles was able to win first place, probably. Great job. Nice one. Now, of course, but the Amethyst Emerald discard was able to go ahead and slide into second. Same with Steel Amethyst. It was able to go in as well and be able to take this out as well. And then we also had some Popsicles that were able to do the same thing. And then Steel Song, and then Ruby Amethyst. And it was an aggro build that was able to get a top 8 going 6-2. That's really interesting. And then Churnadog. This is one of my also favorite new decks. It runs the ladies, it runs the tramps, and it runs the Churnadog to be able to go ahead and get some very powerful stuff out really quick and just hit the ground running. Now, with that as well, we also saw some Dwarven Mine. We saw some Amethyst Steel as well. And it's just really interesting. But that's kind of going to be the thing. You know, if you look at the top 8 decks, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different deck types that qualified and won in the top 8. That's insane. That's really cool. That's something I can get behind right here. And so, like, this whole idea that this meta is kind of one-sided. I mean, we didn't even necessarily see a items build of blue steel that even made it into the top 8. I'm not sure if they had what kind of turnout they had, but it might not have been as high as we thought with the Sapphire Steel. And we're going to dive into these deck lists in a second once we finish taking a look at all the different tournaments. So, because next, it's really interesting too, because we have the Gran Torino de Disney Lorcana. And I had 127 players as well, but this is also something very interesting to take a look at. Why? Look at this meta. First place, 8M1, Amethyst Ruby Aggro. Oh, cool. Sapphire items, aggro Amethyst Steel, Popsicles finally. Then aggro of Amber Steel, Churnadog, Popsicles, aggro again. Then finally an aggro list of Sapphire Steel, and then items. And then even a Blurple in the top 16. Look at this. This is intense. This is exactly what I love to see here. Why? Because of how crazy this is. You look at the top 8. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different decks again in the top 8 that have been able to go ahead and take it. What? That's insane. And Amethyst Ruby is insane too because it's a $118 deck that managed to win in a 127-person tournament. Just really interesting there. Now, with that, we have the Red Saber Games of the Grand Prix, 128 players here as well. Now, this is interesting too. Why? Popsicles won. Cool. No surprise there. And Popsicles were in the top 4. That's awesome. But aggro, really interesting there as well. Aggro being able to go ahead and take second. Then, of course, we have the discard of Emerald Steel, which you don't necessarily see too much of that, but it still did pretty amazing there. And then, of course, all the Diablos and Emerald Amethyst discard. And then, of course, some Popsicles and things like that. A little bit more saturated with the Popsicles. I mean, that was 5 of the 8. But then you still were able to see what discard was able to do with that. And aggro, how it was able to just hit the ground running with that. And again, even in the top 16, we got some bounce of the Blurple here. And again, that's really interesting too, because Blurple is a very lack of representation kind of deck. And so that's definitely something to keep in mind here. Now, at the same time, we, of course, have some aggro and then finally an item. And so it feels like people are almost even stepping away a little bit from the items here, which is really interesting to consider as well. Now, of course, we have another tournament on the 5K. That's 128 people or 118 players as well. And this is really interesting too, because this one's definitely a lot more saturated. Everyone was literally playing items. I feel sorry for anyone else at this tournament because it's like, I'm bringing Steel Song and it's all items and Ruby Sapphire. And you're like, oh. On the plus side, you only need a test going against 2 kinds of decks to be able to do good. You know, once you know how to go against those 2 decks, then you're in a lot better of a place, especially because Ruby Sapphire and even, Blue Steel, it doesn't have a whole ton of variations. You either know that you're going against the aggro, the regular item, or the Oswald item, and you kind of treat the Oswald item and the regular item all the same, and even so, the Oswald items have kind of fallen away a little bit just because it is such a difficult deck to pilot. But this is what's really interesting here. I mean, take a look at this. I mean, this was a very saturated board here. I mean, 43% in the top was, of course, the Popsicles. 37% was the Sapphire Steel, but we still had some Amber Emerald, some Amber Steel, and some Ruby Amethyst still to be able to be seen. Now, of course, the Oswald items, there was only one deck in the top there, but I mean, just a lot of popsicles and a lot of items. And so there's definitely, don't get me wrong, a lot that you definitely need to get prepared for in this current meta. And yeah, you are going to be seeing, some Ruby Sapphire and some items. That's just how this meta happens to be. But it's still really interesting with all the other tournaments that we've been able to have. So let's go ahead and take a look at some deck lists here. The big reason why we're saying that is because here we have the popsicles. We have the discard here, which we're going to be taking a look at, maybe the aggro, and then some Steel Song. I love Churn a Dog. I want to see if they're doing anything different. But it also is very interesting to me that, how this necessarily was looking. And I mean, here right now, we have the Emerald of 60 characters. That's a lot. Sometimes it's kind of considering, do you go ahead and start running maybe the invite to the balls, and things like that. It's interesting. But I love how also they added the Yzma here. It's a 2 cost, and you're able to draw a card and discard a card, which is really interesting. And then other than that, it's pretty standard. Of course, you have the Donald Duck to be able to, go ahead and get some, guards up. Tramp is just an absolutely great card. When you play this character, chosen character gets +1 attack this turn for each character you have in play. Okay, cool. I'll go ahead and send my Little John here, giving him a boost of +4 so he can just go ahead and attack in. Same with Nala. If I have 3 characters out and I play a Tramp, Nala all of a sudden is a 3/4 and can probably take something out and still survive. And that's the big reason why you're going to be playing, the Nalas here, which, the Little Johns and the Nalas might not necessarily look all that great, but then when you go ahead and pump it with the Tramp, raising. When you go ahead and boost its attack with the Tramp, you're able to do a lot there. And so the Kit Cloud Kicker for some bounce back, some Rapunzel for some card draw. If you do want to even go on a little bit more of a budget-friendly version of this is already a 269 deck, and it kind of sucks when literally 200 of that is literally the Rapunzels. That's not good. If you want to go ahead and substitute that for Invite to the Ball, the odds of you hitting another Invite to the Ball with the color combination here is not very high, and it's a 5-cent card. And so that goes all of a sudden from a, very expensive deck down to being a very, very, very affordable deck for you to be able to use. Now, of course, it's really interesting that they have 3 Chernobygs. There's also ways that you can definitely get rid of it. If it's flooding your hand, you can go ahead and discard it with the Yzma and things like that. But I mean, still, this is a really great color combination. And yes, it has 15 uninkables, but this is so low to the ground. You're able to do a lot here. With that. And then for each character that you have in play, you can go ahead and play the Tramp for 1 less. So if you have 4 characters in play, cool, he's 3. And then you just go ahead and you can draw 4 cards, if that's how many's in your hand kind of thing. And then you can go ahead and discard however many cards that you want in that case to be able to really get some cards into the discard to be able to play a Chernobog. And so it's a really interesting deck combination here, and I love how it looks. Now, with that as well, we're going to kind of go down to here now. This is a very interesting, of course, Ruby Sapphire build. And again, it's pretty standard. Nothing to really write home about, but that's because it is able to do what it's able to do at such a high level. Now, of course, the biggest thing is going to be what Sapphire Coil is able to do with the Madame Medusa. Being able to -2 just for inking something, and then playing a Madame Medusa to take anything out that is a 5 or less attack is just absolutely insane. And if you could go ahead and ink 2 different things, cool. Cusco's also a very interesting one. Just by the fact alone that, when you go ahead and play this character, you could go ahead and choose an item or a location and put it into the player's inkwell. Exerted. Cool. Sure, they're going to be able to get that back next turn, but still, okay, cool, thank you. But if you can go ahead and even get rid of a McDuck Manor, if you can go ahead and get rid of their Lucky Dime, and you can just save that in your hand, you get 6 ink so easily in this deck color combination. And that's interesting too, because again, this deck combination doesn't necessarily do all that much of a difference. But what it's able to do so consistently, which is what makes it so interesting. Now, at the same time, This is really interesting too. I don't want to log in. This is really interesting too, just because I mean it's your own standard kind of discard thing, which is really interesting. But you're accompanying it with amethyst instead of steel in this time, so you won't necessarily get like the crazy removals that you might be able to have dealing 2 damage with the Let the Storm Rage On or the Strength of a Raging Fire, but it's still able to do some absolutely insane things. First and foremost, your Diablo shift line is going to have 50,000 different ones that you could go ahead and shift into. No problem there. Now, then you also have the draw power. Your 1 cost Diablo can either look at an entire opponent's hand, or the other Diablo, when it gets destroyed, you're able to draw a card. That's pretty good. Then at the same time, you have the Fox that you can go ahead and bounce things back. The Ursula to be able to remove any removal songs that they might have, or any songs of your choice that you can get rid of. Prince John's to be able to draw cards when your opponents discard a card. The Queen, which is able to do some great finishing moves there. All in all, it's a great job. And evasive, again, is so difficult in this meta to be able to take care of that there's a lot going on for you here. Evasive, you really need to hope that you have that kind of removal, either the Brawls or the Zeuses or things like that. Even the Storms to be able to take on the Diablos, the Genies, and things like that. Otherwise, they're just going to be questing out the wazoo and just climbing so fast. Now, of course, I do also love the improvise, being able to give a character +1 attack and draw a card, replaces itself. Really nice right there. And then of course the hypnotizes are pretty standard. It's really interesting that they have has Set My Heart. Really interesting card. Banished chosen item. And then, of course, you can definitely sing that, which is great. Ursula can sing that, and there's no real loss there. You lose out on maybe a lore. Cool, fine. To be able to banish a chosen item, I'm down. Sudden Chill is one of the best cards, though. Each opponent chooses and discards a card. Awesome. And then, of course, still maintaining the card draw with friends on the other side, and we don't talk about Bruno. The thing to keep in mind with this as well is, yes, it is a little bit of a $200 deck, but that's just mainly because of the Diablos here. Otherwise, everything else is pretty cheap. The Queens are falling. The Genies are finally coming down. That used to be a $15 to $20 card, and it's finally coming down. And then otherwise, this is a very affordable deck. So, I mean, if you're going to be spending $120 on 4 cards, yeah, that is asking a little bit of a lot, but once you get those 4 cards, you're able to basically build the rest of the deck for incredibly cheap, which is really nice to be able to see. And so, yeah, it's just a really great color combination here. Now, the Amethyst Steel, it was able to get 4th at this tournament, which is a really interesting idea here. And it has a lot going for it, which I just absolutely love here. Now, it has its pretty standard build here, going 4 for the Binja, and this is kind of the debate that I'm more so considering, because it's like the Binja's good. Would I rather just switch for I find my Platinum? Because it's like I find him just goes ahead and banishes all items in play, and Binja just goes ahead and is able to destroy and remove 1 item. Now, yes, he's able to quest for 2, which is a very helpful card as well, and that's something to definitely keep in mind. But at the same time, just removing 1 item might be helpful, but at the same time, even especially being able to target the dime, that's a pretty big deal, and that is something that will definitely keep you in the game and slow down your opponents a lot. I mean, this deck was able to get 4th place here at an over 100 player tournament. The Giant Cobra is just going to be an absolutely clutch card, being able to discard 1 and then go ahead and get it out again. That is awesome. Now, of course, the Cobra can go ahead and be targeted by items like Sapphire Coil, or even Ice Block is a great one to run for this, because if you target him, then it automatically vanishes and you get rid of a 4/4 for literally an Ice Block. That's a great option right there. And so those are things that you kind of need to prepare when going against this aggro deck, especially if you are going to be playing, the Steel cards or the Sapphire Steel decks or the Ruby Sapphire decks. You need to consider how to go against these illusions that you are going to be seeing, even though the Giant Cobra is the only illusion thus far that is worth playing. And so all in all, just a really great deck. The Peats are going to be slowing things down. The Genie, though, is going to be one that I am going to be talking about a lot here, because it's whenever this character quests, you may shuffle this card into your deck and draw 3 cards. Just really being able to maintain that momentum there And also being at a 3/5, the only thing that's necessarily going to be removing that is going to be a Zeus, and even then, otherwise, it's really hard to get up to that 5 damage to be able to remove it. I mean, you can go ahead and maybe bounce it back per chance, but even at the 3 stat line, that's a really great stat line. So you have Medusa, you might have a Dragonfire or things like that, but not too many people are even running Dragonfires in their decks. And so there's just a lot here that is very interesting to be able to see. And then also, of course, the Genies, 2 Genies. I wouldn't also mind running a little bit more, but again, you're keeping this deck very low to the ground so that you can hit the ground running super fast to be able to just go. Plain and simple. You're not necessarily going to be playing a whole lot of 4 costs unless you do get into some kind of trouble, especially with the Genie. You need some card draw, or the Genie, you need to get that lore. Or the goat, you're just going to win the game. Cool. Otherwise, you're kind of inking the goat, especially if you get the goat in the opening hand, that's the immediate ink there. So it's really interesting to be able to see. And so with that, of course, one of my favorites, I love Amber Steel. I love Amber Steel Song. It's a great deck. It's one that I end up playing in my league a lot too. It's what I played in my first league match and managed to actually do a pretty good job going against the Sapphire items and build in that case. It was able to just to run and take care of things. The Oswalds just couldn't stand up to that, and whatnot. It does hurt a little bit when you go against warded characters, but again, the warded build of the aggro Sapphire isn't necessarily being seen as much, and so the warded characters aren't necessarily being as prevalent as they were even like 2 weeks ago, even last week, for example. So it's really interesting to see that kind of shift. But still, I mean, the fact that you're able to go ahead and get these things going, I mean, you have Let the Storm Rage On. Part of your world is a very interesting run. Return a character card from your discard to your hand, and you can sing that. So a Cinderella can just go ahead and be like, I really want that Daisy back. Well, part of your world, whoop, it's back. Cool. That's awesome. Strength of a Raging Fire as normal. Of course, still a $20 freaking card. Even the foil version going for 120 at one point. I mean, it's fallen a lot, luckily. But still. Zeus, of course, being $5. 1, I find them, I flatten them. And 4, Whole New Worlds. And the Whole New Worlds, man, it just feels good if you can go ahead and get that sung. Now, One Prince Naveen can go ahead and get the Whole New World sung. You can also go ahead and just have it sing as Zeus. Whatever you want it to sing, it can go ahead and sing pretty well and get things going. Now, this is probably one of my newest favorite cards here because of how well it can do, especially against the Sapphire Steel and the Ruby Sapphire. I was playing a game, and it was just really interesting to be able to see here because I was able to go ahead and play a turn 1 Daisy, or like, for example, well, in the situation, I played a turn 1 Daisy, and then turn 2, I played a second Daisy, and then a Mermaid Lagoon on top of that. And so it's like, cool, if you don't take care of these things, I'm gaining 5 lore a turn. And it's been so many times that I've been able to find that people have actually kind of ignored or forgotten about, the Mermaid Lagoon here. And I'm just gaining 1 lore passively. And it's like, cool, thank you so much. Great having a game with you. And yes, there's going to be times, they might be able to go ahead and put in a Fox and attack right into the Mermaid Lagoon. But is that necessarily in their best interest? If you go ahead and have an aerial that has just sung a song and it just went ahead and Zeused one of your characters, and then they go ahead and switch in with a Fox and they go ahead and take out the aerial, well, then you're still gaining the 1 lore a turn. Okay, cool, thanks. Like, I really appreciate that. Keep it going, kind of thing. And so it's just really interesting to be able to see. Now, one card that I have actually loved running in this kind of build has been the new Gantu as well. Yes, he's not inkable, and you're already running a lot of uninkables, mainly because of your songs here, but that's just because the songs are so good anyway. But the one Gantu has been an absolutely paramount card in certain matchups. I went against a Ruby Sapphire at my locals kind of thing, and I played the Gantu out, and the guy was like, cool, well, I'm actually pretty stuck at this point. I'm playing 3 lore to go ahead and get the Popsicle out so I can just draw 1 card because I need it so bad, and it slowed him down immensely there. And that was just really awesome to be able to see. And so it's going to take some, testing and getting used to, and also really, what is your preference with this kind of combination too? But it's like Amber Steel necessarily isn't dead. A lot of us were worried when we saw, especially just how much support Sapphire got. We thought that Amber Steel was going to be dead, and that's not necessarily so. 2 weeks ago, we saw it get a first place win, and then this week we see it get a sixth place win at a 125 player tournament. Just a really great job. Aurora is also a really interesting one because you can go ahead and quest with her. And then whenever you remove damage from a character, you ready this character and she can't quest your challenge for the rest of the turn. Okay, cool. She can sing. She's a singer 5. So you can go ahead and have, Ariel sing something or whatever. You can have the Rapunzel come in and heal, and she readies right back up. She can sing a whole new world. You can go super wide. You can do all that crazy stuff. It's awesome. And the quest for 2 is just really good too. Being a $5 card totally makes sense. It's not too expensive of a card. The Daisy Ducks have been going up in price a little bit, but, it's just because people are playing this kind of deck combination. So much. So, yep, we've already talked about that. And then let me see if there's just any other decks that we necessarily want to be talking about. I mean, we do have like the 7-Dwarf Mine, which is really interesting as well. And I do kind of like this build, and especially seeing that it did get 10th. That's still a really good job right there, and it was able to. How much? What was its score again? I don't remember what its score was. We'll go back and look at that. But again, this is a pretty standard build. One new thing that they are adding is 2 Plutos. Just be able to pay 1 less for your next character once it activates. Cool, that's pretty good. And that might be able to go ahead and play, your happy turn 3 for free, or turn 2, play a happy for free, and then just move them into the mine, or kind of thing. Not on turn 2. You have to play the mine out turn 2, but on turn 3, maybe getting that out and then maybe getting a Daisy out as well, or something that's a one cost kind of thing. Really cool. And otherwise, it's just a really standard build. The Kitas are really interesting too. And I'm really wondering if the Kitas actually ended up hurting him more in the tournament than it ended up helping. And that's something to definitely keep in mind too. It's like, would you have rather, almost played like maybe a Bagheera a little bit more, or would you have rather double down on like the Donalds, for example, to really just get those bodyguards and that additional lore gain? I mean, heck, I would almost even want to run, 2 of the Donald Ducks, go ahead and run a Baloo as well, which would be a really interesting combination as well, because the Baloo, as soon as it's taken out, even by just being banished, then you go ahead and gain the 2 lore, and that can be a really big game changer, especially if you're struggling against the Ruby Sapphire at the end game. It's like, cool, if you go ahead and just get rid of him, he's gone. And I get 2 lore. Thank you so much for that, because you're normally at that 16, 18 lore trying to get that final 2 lore, and the Baloo can just really do its part to get you there. And so, really, really interesting meta that just continues to develop more, and I am so excited to see what that is going to bring. So guys, that is your meta report for this week. What do you think so far about this? How are you liking this meta shaping up? Right now, I think we are in a great spot. We're seeing kind of a step back from the Ruby Sapphire and the Sapphire Steel. That's not to say that it's still super prevalent, but hey, it's actually been able to do a lot. And it's been really cool to be able to see what's been able to happen here with this deck list. So I'm curious to see what's going to continue to be able to develop for this color combination. So what are your thoughts on this set 7 meta? How are you feeling about these tournaments that are happening right now? And whatever else, go ahead and let me know down in the comments below. And if you like this content, please subscribe. Always love to create new content for you guys and discuss Lorcana with you, so go ahead and let me know. And if you want to join the Discord, we do have an online league that is on Pixelborn and Discord right now that you are more than welcome to join at any time. And with that being said, have a good one, guys.